Hello, Merry Christmas, and welcome to Planet Smasher HQ. It's the end of the year, so I thought I would share with you a little bit of a retrospective on what's been happening this month at Planet Smasher HQ. Stick around and I'll fill you in. Hello, welcome, happy holidays. Since we spoke last, I have been to Dragonmeet and I sold lots of zines. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. I'll tell you the other things that I have been working on, and I suppose I'll reflect a little bit on what I didn't do. Let's get into it. Look, the clipboard is back. It's just like the old days. Okay, so what did I do this month? Well, I went to Dragonmeet, which was very exciting. It's a one-day event, but I decided to go the night before, even though I was travelling up on the train, and so I could have arrived at Dragonmeet on the day and get everything set up in a rush. But do you know what? I didn't want to get up super early on the Saturday and then have to do a whole day, and I had somewhere to stay in London. But actually, what happened was it ended up being a really awesome opportunity for networking. So Dragonmeet is a UK, London-based, very long running. It's been around since the 70s, definitely the early 80s. But it's an RPG convention. And so a lot of the folks that go there are, in the heartland of the UK RPG scene. And so it was a great opportunity to do some networking with some people that I'm less familiar with. I'm a bit more familiar with the wargaming scene here in the UK. So I rocked up on the Friday, got set up, and I had arranged to meet in the bar with my mate Chris McDowell of Into the Odd and the Doomed. So we hooked up with him and had a beer. We noticed Will from Forbidden Psalms sitting nearby, so I went and introduced myself to Will. He and I are label mates on Electi Studios, so we had a few things to chat about in terms of our current projects. He's recently done a sort of fantasy football game too called Merc Ball, so I was showing him Crud Bucket and we were swapping games. It was really cool to hang out with him. He's a little bit further ahead of me in terms of understanding how to get things printed and working with different printers, and he's actually changed printers recently, so he's telling me some war stories about that. So that was a really lovely connection to make. I also got to hang out with the lovely people of Rowan Rook and Deckard. I think they claim to be the third biggest RPG publisher in the UK, and they are certainly a super friendly and hip bunch of people. So that was awesome. And who else did I chat to? Chris from Beyond Cataclysm, who has always been very friendly and supportive. And yeah, just in general, got an opportunity to hang out, meet some new people, make some connections, and then on the day, Dragonmeet was a pretty awesome success. I had a limited amount of stock because I had to bring everything on the train in a roller suitcase. But we sold through a lot of what we took. The textbook did surprisingly well, as we sold all the copies of the fundamentals of tabletop miniature games design that we brought. With the exception of a couple that I gave away to friendly people, including Kenneth Height, who I'm a big fan of. He's an RPG designer who's worked on, the thing that I play the most of his is Trail of Cthulhu, but he's also worked on Night's Black Agents and the most recent 5th edition of Vampire the Masquerade. Anyway, he's a cool dude, and I showed him the textbook, gave him a copy. And I also showed him a copy of Crawling Chaos, because it was pretty directly inspired by his writing in the Tours of Lovecraft, where he talks about the different locations and he goes through the different stories. There are two books, one's called Tour to Lovecraft, the other one is called The Tales, I think. So I thanked him for those books, and we got chatting about the textbook. He was super interested. Turns out he's an old school counters and cards wargamer, so he was pleased to see the miniatures war games getting some love academically, because there isn't really anything on it. I had a chance to chat to the guys that do Troika, talk shop about book publishing and hiring artists and stuff. And in general, because it's an RPG convention, the people that wandered past the booth, we would ask them, do you play many miniatures games? And they would mostly say, no, not really. So it was great that I had the Crawling Chaos to point to them and say, aha, well, I have just released an RPG. And the pitch was working really well. So the pitch basically boiled down to, it's a Lovecraftian story game with one player and many GMs, and people's eyebrows raised at that. And then I'd continue, the player is the narrator, they may only speak in the first person. The other players are the architects of their doom, they can only affect the world outside the player, and they have a pool of points that they can use to spend to introduce certain actions, interrupt the goings on of the narrator, and generally usher them towards their doom. And it worked really well. People were really intrigued by it, and a lot of people picked it up. And when I chatted to the Troika guys later in the day, they had noticed it being carried about by lots of people. So yeah, I think that was really good. Because it was such a literate crowd when it comes to RPG, I kept expecting to find somebody who would look at it and go, oh right, so it's just like XYZ that I hadn't heard about, that already did the one player many GMs thing. But it didn't. And everyone was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, actually interesting. So it sort of feels like there was something hiding in plain sight that I've caught onto. So that's making me a little bit more excited about Crawling Chaos and wanting to do something to sort of claim the space there. So I'll talk a little bit more about what I might do next with Crawling Chaos as I talk about what's happening early next year. So I've still got a box of some of the zines, because I couldn't take them all to Dragon Meet. So I started this month to look at what it would take to set up a web store on planetsmashergames.com and just start selling, not only the zines that I've made, but also the books that I've bought in for, from other publishers for stock, the Textbook and Gaslands and Hobgoblin and all that stuff. Pretty quickly I ran into understanding what I didn't understand about the complexities of international shipping and collecting taxes, and mostly the EU being a bit of a pain in terms of your obligations and the stuff that you have to do. So I started to shy away from that, and I instead focused on the Kickstarter that I wanted to run for Space Kits next year. So I shied away from that, but I will come back round to that in a moment. So instead what I did was I made sure that I put all of the new PDF copies of the zines up on DriveThruRPG. They have already been all up on my itch page, planetsmashergames.itch.io, but I wanted to get them up on DriveThruRPG because it's obviously a well-known platform. That was a bit of a pain. It took a few days, and what I figured was, if I put them up on DriveThruRPG, then I can get them offered print on demand relatively easily. Turns out that's not the case. If you want to offer things through print on demand on DriveThruRPG, you need to lay them out in the specific way that they need them to be laid out. So the long and the short of it is that although all the new zines are now up on DriveThruRPG as well as itch, I can't make them print on demand without completely laying them out from scratch again, which is a bit tedious, but I will probably prioritize that work at some point. I just haven't been able to prioritize it among all of the other things that's been going on this month. So I'm kind of disappointed because I wanted to get them out physically and show you them and then be able to get them into your hands physically, but it's just not proving practical. There are other routes other than DriveThruRPG print on demand, which I am investigating, so more on that in a minute. One other thing that's been happening quite a lot this month and has been taking up quite a lot of my time, which is good, is publisher conversations. So I have been talking to a number of different publishers, a couple of new publishers. I probably had 5 different publisher conversations this month for different potential projects. Nothing is in the bag yet, but I'll let you know when anything is. But that has meant that I've been burning some cycles this month on prototyping things and getting things sort of in shape to share with people. So that's kind of invisible work that I can't share. So the main thing that I can talk about that I've been working on is the Space Kits Kickstarter. So I've talked a little bit in the last video about how I was sort of umming and ahhing about running a Kickstarter in 2024, and then in the summer I decided actually it wasn't the right time and I needed a little bit longer to prepare and to build the audience here on YouTube and to be certain about which game and get the artwork done, blah 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 blah. Anyway, I am going to be running a Kickstarter for Space Kits in probably March. March 21 is my current target date. We'll see if I hit that. The Kickstarter preview page is up. so you can click the little follow button and get notified when the campaign goes live. I would be extremely appreciative if you did. So why am I running a Kickstarter for Space Kits? Well, the honest answer is I've got some exciting projects with publishers in the future, but I'm going to run out of money before I get to see any of the royalties for those. So I need to figure out how to make some more immediate money in 25 and probably in 26. And the way that I think that that is most achievable is direct to customers. So I need to find a way to get product directly into your hands. I started to investigate how easy it would be to set up a shop and just be able to sell zines. I think that I can probably work my way round to that. But one thing is that a Kickstarter campaign can create a lot of energy and focus and excitement around a particular project at a particular moment in time. And it has a big potential marketing impact for a small company like me. So I want to run a Kickstarter. I want to build some buzz around a moment and a campaign and get a bunch of people to chip in to buy a cool new miniatures game. And I think that Space Kits is a cool new miniatures game. And I think also Space Kits has got a really strong identity and a really strong target player base. So I think that it's going to appeal to narrative and light-hearted indie skirmish fans, but I think it's also going to appeal very much to light-hearted 40k players. So I'm hoping to catch some wind in the 40k orc community. That would be amazing, and to tempt some of those players who already have orc miniatures to check out the game and back the campaign. I'm also working with Cromlech, who makes some fantastic orc miniatures. We're in negotiations about exactly what it is we'll do, but what I'm hoping is to be able to offer small sets, small squads of Cromlech orcs, probably 3 different factions, like a small gang of 3 or 4 orcs in each of those different kind of faction flavors that match the background of Space Kits. And so you can order the Space Kits rulebook along with some miniatures. That's good for lots of reasons. The most mercurial reason for that is that if people can buy miniatures, that will increase the average backer sort of basket size, and that will make the project more visible, likely in the Kickstarter discovery pages. So it will get more. It will get more traffic, and hopefully I'll get more backers. I've also convinced Cromlech to make some arm pieces for their miniatures where the boys are just holding beer cans and stuff. So that is sweet. I'm pleased with that. So preparing for my first Kickstarter has involved a lot of learning and also talking to people and sending emails. And so that's a lot of what has been going on this month in the studio, is just trying to get stuck into what this Kickstarter might mean. One thing I will say is that once you put a Kickstarter preview page up, my goodness, do people come out of the woodwork and start emailing you with their services, which is great because a lot of them I didn't even know such services existed. One of the companies that emailed me was a Chinese factory that I hadn't heard of. So I was already preparing a sort of description of the technical specifications of what Space Kits might be to send to one factory. So I sent it to another to get some comparative quotes. And I was exploring both a simple version of the game, which is probably just a hardback book with some tokens. And then I was exploring what putting it in a box with some more dangerous components like bottle caps might look like. I got some quotes from my local UK printer to see how that stood up, and it's interesting because they're able to print it about the same price, but it's not going to involve all that intermodal shipping from China. And that revealed to me a whole nother world of pain, which was insurance and indemnity insurance professionally for the product, for the thing when it's shipped on a boat, all kinds of new exciting costs and things to understand. So I've been talking to some people about that. I've also been talking to some people about fulfillment and pledge managers and trying to figure out how to deal with global distribution, all of which is interesting because I had sort of started to think, maybe I will just sell it to the UK and America, because UK is very simple for me to mail things out and America is such an important market for me, it would be worth the hassle to figure that out. But because there are companies like Games Quest who exist already and have solved these problems already, me using an existing service like that is cool because they are exactly solving the problems that I need them to solve. And so I might be able to change my thinking about Space Kits and make it more of an international campaign if I've got the right support and the right partners in place. A lot of that has been working out, how am I going to get this thing made? How am I going to get it moved around? How am I going to get it shipped to backers? How the backers going to pay for it and pay tax and update their addresses? All of this stuff is mostly solved. It's just how much money do I want to spend out of my own pocket, because the point of this is to make sure I can feed my kids for at least half of this year. And so the additional costs are not not something I'm just sort of accepting lightly. But at the same time, like, there's a sort of imaginary world where, I'll just do a lot of hard work, filling boxes and printing out address labels and posting it and stuff. But the point is, I guess, that number one, like, that's not a use of my time that I was looking forward to. I wanted to be able to spend my time doing the thing I'm good at, which is making new games and selling them to people. And also, like, it's kind of a romantic vision that crumbles quite quickly when you realise the complexity of how getting things out in Europe or getting things out across the world is. And I don't know, I just want to leave this to the experts. And it will mean that it'll mean that it's simpler for me, it's more reliable for the backers. It may not end up being that much more expensive compared to doing it myself, but that depends a little bit on what scale the Kickstarter for Space Kits gets to. And that is something I have absolutely no idea about. I mean, I've got some signals, like I know how big the Mike Hutchinson's Hobgoblin Kickstarter was, and that was a weird little game. Who wants a miniature agnostic rank and flank game? It didn't have any miniatures. It was from an unknown publisher. So all of those things are kind of similar in terms of what Space Kits is. Space Kits has this like really obvious 40k orc player potential audience. So, if it catches fire in a sub-community there, it could do really well. So I don't know. Could do 300 backers, could do 3,000 backers. I don't think it'll do more than 3,000 backers. That's sort of the upper limit. So it's really exciting. So the other thing that someone that I was talking to said this month to me was, that's a shame you're thinking about launching it in March, because February is Zine Quest, and that is a good time on Kickstarter to get attention for small games, and yours is kind of zine shaped, so you could have done it that way. And that's made me think, so I might, if I've got some partnerships in place for example, fulfillment, and I've already got my pledge manager sorted out, I think there's a possibility where I could put up the Crawling Chaos in exactly the version that I've already made and printed out. Could put that up for Zine Quest, get sort of 100, 300 backers if I'm lucky, make a little bit of money, get it shipped out internationally through Games Quest. That could be sort of done and dusted in a few weeks. And it would allow me to make a few mistakes and learn just the first basic turn through before I get to Space Kits, which I hope will do 5 to 10 times better than a Zine Quest Crawling Chaos would do. So yeah, anyway, still haven't decided about that stuff. That's a little bit risky because it means that if something goes wrong with Crawling Chaos or it takes slightly too long, I'd have to delay Space Kits. Which is kind of important to me not to do too much of. But yeah, so anyway, that's me rambling about Kickstarter. I will be talking at much more length and in more detail in a discussion that I'm having with Glenn over on the Rule of Carnage. We'd been asked a few times if I was thinking about going to Kickstarter, whether we would document a bit the journey of me being a newbie, hitting Kickstarter for the first time, with the support of Glenn, who's done it a few times. He's done 6 or 7 successfully fulfilled Kickstarter campaigns. So I'm going to be bringing some of my thoughts to Glenn, and he's going to be sort of helping me work through that. And if that's interesting to you to understand kind of some of the more like dirty details about what goes into planning and making decisions around a Kickstarter campaign, then come on over to Rule of Carnage on YouTube and follow along with that discussion. We're going to have our first discussion probably early in the new year, and we'll keep that as a recurring series on the podcast as things develop. So as I reflect on the last month, and I suppose on the last 3 months, because I tend to sort of do a bit of goal setting for quarters, just a sort of habit I've picked up from working in bigger businesses. So I set myself a few goals for this quarter, and I definitely missed one of them in a big way. So I was talking a few months ago about my excitement around agreeing with Offspray that we would do a second edition of A Billion Suns. I need to turn that manuscript into Offspray by the sort of middle of the summer in the coming year. So I want to make sure that I've had enough playtesting and got into an open beta for long enough to be able to get a good number of eyes on that game and make sure that the new version is cooking. So I was hoping to finish the year with an open beta version of the second edition of A Billion Suns, but it's not been possible, and I haven't been able to get to the point where I can release that. I consider that a bit of a failure, but, you know, I think I was a bit underestimating both the work and my enthusiasm for the work that would be involved in getting 7 zines out for Dragonmeat. I think that was a really good thing to do, and it's ended up both creating some enthusiasm around the prototypes and the work that I've done for the preceding 12 months here in the studio, and also it's given me like a really nice stable of kind of things to show publishers, to show the kind of breadth of the stuff that I'm working on and what could be possible. So I'm not sad about the prioritization decisions that I made. I'm a bit disappointed that I haven't got a Billion Suns second edition playtesting version ready for people, but that is something that I'm going to have to find a way of getting out in the next 3 months in between all of this Kickstarter work. So I'm going to have to figure out really how to prioritize and how to make sure I'm giving enough time. I mean, the good thing is that, like, you know, I've got 5 days, probably 7 days a week, if I'm honest, to work on this stuff. Sometimes my time is absolutely grabbed by strange little imaginings of games that, you know, just have to force themselves out, and I will continue to do that. And so you will probably see some more games coming out in early access on itch before the Kickstarter comes out. But like, if I was a grown up, I would probably just focus on the Kickstarter and A Billion Suns, and I would super push away any other work. It's not how my brain works, though. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to joining you next year and having you follow along with the meandering path that I take as I work hard towards both A Billion Suns second edition and Space Kits, but keep distracting myself with, you know, Juggernauts and a Fantasy Perilous Tales and another role-playing game idea. All right, well, thank you so much for following along with this journey this year. This year has been extremely enjoyable and satisfying for me. I haven't got to the point where this experiment is sustainable. I hope to do so early next year, but I feel like I've made a ton of exciting games. I've been able to share my journey on YouTube with you guys, and I am really excited about the opportunities that are coming up next year. I'm terrified by the possibility of going to Kickstarter with Space Kits, but I think it'll probably be fine. There's just so much that I don't know that it's hard to get completely excited about it without a deep sense of fear. The one thing that has been absolutely astronomically valuable to me and just really encouraging to me is the Patreon backers. So if you have been a Patreon backer at any point in the last year and a half, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. If you would like to support what I do, if you would like to tell me that it's okay to keep distracting myself by putting out new early access micro games and more miniature games and role-playing games, then the best way that you can do so is head on over to patreon.com/planetsmashergames and sign up to drop a little gas in the tank each month to help this journey continue. The money that comes from Patreon is a really significant component of how I am supporting myself as an independent artist. It combines with the royalties that I make from published games like Hobgoblin and Gaslands, and it combines with the hypothetical money that I'm going to make from direct sales and crowdfunded stuff on Kickstarter and through and through sites like Itch and Drive-Thru RPG. So yeah, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It's a massive deal to me. Right, I've got to go and do some admin emails, talk to some people about some more Kickstarter related stuff. So until next year, have a very merry festive season and a wonderful new year, and I will catch you soon. All right, bye-bye.